I think anybody, and particularly, say, with men who are teaching, that if they establish their homosexuality and do it in any militant kind of way, that they can do and demand so the emotional acceptance of the child. It's making a very great emotional demand on the child, which I don't think any teacher has a right to do.
There are at least 25,000 gay teachers in Britain. As many as 2,000 of them work in the London area. And today more and more of them want the right not just to teach, but to be open about their gayness at school. People like Mary Whitehouse, herself a former sex education teacher, say no. Tonight, Gay Life looks at their arguments and at the battle that faces gays in the classroom. Geoffrey Brighton was looking forward to training as a biology teacher. He applied for a postgraduate teaching course at Leeds University and was accepted for this autumn. Everything seemed straightforward until the time came for his routine medical check.
So I went along to Leeds University Student Health Service and saw a doctor there who told me that I was perfectly fit and allowed me to go. However, later the same day, he recalled me when he told me that he'd seen in my medical files that I was a homosexual. And because of that, he couldn't issue the requisite medical certificate until he'd actually had a psychiatric report. He said that he felt that this was necessary, not only to protect the children in the school in the event of my being a menace, but also to protect myself from any rags that the children might give me, and finally to protect himself in the event of my causing havoc in a school. He told me that it seemed to him that he had three options open to him. The first one being that he passed me and let me go, but he felt himself that that would be unprofessional. The second option that he had open to him was to fail me and to forget about me, but he felt that that would be unfair to me as an individual. And finally, to come to some kind of compromise. The compromise being he would give me a B-Pass certificate, which meant those who suffer from defects, including physical deformity and disfigurement. I told him that I didn't think that homosexuality was a defect, and certainly not a physical deformity or disfigurement. And on that basis, that was totally unacceptable to me. I further told him that I wouldn't see a psychiatrist under any circumstances when I'm not ill, and that I'd take the matter out of his hands. So as it stands now, I still haven't got the medical certificate which will enable me to start this course, and without that, of course, I can't pursue my chosen career of teaching.
Right now, Geoffrey Brighton's case is the subject of a row between gay teachers and their union, the National Union of Teachers.
This weekend we're picketing the National Union of Teachers executive meeting. The picket has been called by the London Gay Teachers Group, by Rank and File Teacher, and by the Gay Rights at Work Conference Planning Committee. We're here in support of Geoffrey Brighton in his struggle, and we want the National Union of Teachers to take an unequivocal stand in support of Geoffrey and of all lesbians and gay men involved in teaching. So far there's been a lot of pressure from rank and file teachers to have gay rights made into a real union issue, but so far very little action from the union nationally, and we think it's about time they did something about it.
Gay Life has spoken to many other teachers whose gayness has threatened their jobs, like this experienced woman teacher who applied last year for a senior post in a special school.
After an extensive interview, during which when they asked me about my home life, I said that I lived with another professional woman. I got this job as a remedial teacher in an establishment for disturbed children. On the first day of taking up the job, I was called into the headmaster's office and asked in all confidence, was I homosexual? I immediately said yes. And then, although it had been in confidence, he said, did I realize that it was his duty to tell the members of the committee who'd interviewed me about this? I said that I saw no reason at all to tell them, as this had absolutely no bearing on my professional efficiency as a teacher. Well, I worked there for a month on tenterhooks, and then was finally called in to see the head of the committee, who was an ex-inspector of schools, and the headmaster. And they said it had been decided unanimously that I would have to leave because of my homosexuality. And the justifications for this were it might cause dissension amongst the staff, which consequently proved not to be true because all but one of them signed a petition supporting my staying at the school. And most appallingly, they said I would be offering the children a third sexual model, and because they were already disturbed, this would further compound their problems. I think what further compounded their problems is that most of them had already experienced abandonment, and my leaving meant that they experienced this yet again.
This teacher has since found another job, but in common with many gay teachers, she still fears she may lose it if she comes out.
Just the mere fact that they've been discovered to be gay has put them in an awful position and made them very frightened for their future career. And obviously, I think, puts many gay people off teaching who would otherwise be well qualified to do it.
Unfortunately for those gay teachers, opinion polls suggest that they face a tougher fight to win acceptance than gays in any other profession. A recent Gallup poll found that 35% of people surveyed didn't want to see gays in the army. 46% thought that they shouldn't be doctors. Another 46% didn't want gay vicars. 60% were against the idea of gay prison officers. But top of the list, with 63% of the population against them, were gay teachers. To find out the reason for this hostility, we visited a co-educational comprehensive school in South London, where the headmaster, Peter Dawson, takes a hard line against gay teachers. We asked him to give his reasons.
It is a matter of fact that some homosexuals are inclined to force their attentions upon children. And since one couldn't be sure that it might happen until it had happened, then I think that we shouldn't take the risk. I don't think that the classroom is the place to take such risks. And I don't think parents send their children to school to be put in that sort of risk situation. And certainly, if the average parent knew it was going to happen, he'd find another school for his child.
So that's one charge, that gay teachers are more likely to molest their pupils. Is it true? The statistics available about sexual assaults on children are inconclusive, and very little research has been carried out in this area. But what we can say is that such offences, either by straight or gay teachers, are very rare. There are 500,000 teachers in England and Wales and over 9 million pupils. But in any one year, there are no more than 20 sexual assaults in schools. The Department of Education doesn't break these down into homosexual or heterosexual offences, but Home Office criminal statistics about sexual assaults on children by all adults show that in 1976, 1,807 heterosexuals were convicted, but only 687 homosexuals. If we apply this to schools, it means that those few children who are at risk are 3 times more at risk from straight teachers than from gay ones. Just last week, for instance, a straight male teacher was accused of indecent assault on young schoolgirls. Dr. Robin Benyans is a psychiatrist who has dealt with cases of child abuse.
I don't feel there's any greater risk of sexual assaults on children from homosexual teachers than from heterosexual teachers. And in my experience, both occurrences are very rare. Over the years that I've been connected as an advisor, that is, to special schools and ordinary schools, I'm aware of perhaps 2 or 3 homosexual assaults that have taken place on children, and perhaps half a dozen, maybe 10 heterosexual assaults that have taken place on children. I think we also want to remember that some naughty and disturbed children may actually set it up for the teacher. They may complain of something that hasn't happened. And perhaps with very immature children, there's another trap, which is that they may imagine that something has happened when in fact nothing at all was intended.
So the evidence just doesn't back up the fear that gay teachers are more of a menace to children than straight teachers. But the people who object to gay teachers don't only worry about physical assault, they seem just as concerned about gay teachers talking about their sexuality to their pupils. John Warburton was one teacher who found that discussing his gayness got him into trouble.
I was employed as a temporary terminal teacher at St Marylebone Church of England School for Girls for the autumn term of 1974. Halfway through that term, I took part in a gay rights demonstration in the centre of London. And a pupil from school saw me on that demonstration. when I went back to school on the following Monday, it was obvious that she'd spread the news around that Mr. Warburton's a queer. And the first class I went into, I was confronted by a lot of abuse. I remember chants of homo, and questions, are you really queer? So I decided that the best way to deal with it was to answer the questions honestly, explain why I was on the demonstration, and explain something about gay oppression. The discussion lasted for about 15 minutes. The class seemed to be happy with what was said, and we went back to talking about geography. The same thing happened in 4 other classes in that week, and nothing happened after that until the penultimate week of my employment there, when I was covering a class for an absent teacher. The same thing happened again when the kids realised who I was. Only this time, news got back through that form's teacher to the headmistress, who called me into her office, saying that allegations had been made that I'd been discussing homosexuality with this particular class.
The headmistress reported the matter to the Inner London Education Authority, ILEA, and while they were considering it, John Warburton applied to teach at another school.
During the Christmas holidays, I got word from ILEA that, in fact, unless I sign a statement saying that I would not discuss homosexuality with pupils apart from a structured sex education programme approved by the head, I would not be able to take up that position. I decided I couldn't do that, mainly because the ILEA avoided the fact that the issue of homosexuality was raised by the kids at all times, and I only responded to it. And at no time have I been offered an alternative to the way that I dealt with it. If I was to sign that statement, as far as I'm concerned, I would have no right to defend myself if the same thing happened again.
John Warburton is now blacklisted from teaching in any ILEA school. Teachers like him feel that being ordered not to mention their gayness is an attack on their rights.
I think ILEA's criticisms were that I was discussing my personal sexuality, their argument being that homosexuality is a private issue. I explained that I'm homosexual 24 hours a day, just like a heterosexual teacher is, and a heterosexual automatically talks about the family, the marriage, the children, and I feel that I have the same rights to do that, and especially when I'm confronted by abuse from kids. The only way that I can maintain my position as a teacher is to explain alternatives to the prejudices that the children have.
We have a right to live our lives openly. We have a right not to hide, not to be asked to lie, not to be asked to put off the children when they ask, are you married? To sort of crush all sorts of normal relationship that every other teacher can expect. That if heterosexual teachers can bring their spouses to school functions, if a woman can come in wearing an engagement ring, or come in pregnant for that matter, thus manifesting her sexuality, then I can manifest mine, and that where they are being open, I'm not going to hide.
But not only do gay teachers want the right to discuss their own sexuality, they want sex education in general to take more account of homosexuality, a subject which is at present largely excluded.
If, for example, you were to take all the gay people in the United Kingdom and gathered all the gay people, using the minimum figures again of 1 in 20, into one place, they would just about fill an area the size of Wales with its population of 3 million people.
This slide kit was put together by the Campaign for Homosexual Equality to introduce the subject of homosexuality to school children.
At different stages, different people come to realise that they are gay. But very often at school, there will be people who realise that they are gay. And when they do that, they often find that they don't really know where to turn to. What are they to do?
But the more open gay teachers want to be, the more outraged their critics become. Why?
The good teacher is good because he encourages children to copy him, to be like him. That's the mark of the good teacher, that the children in his class or the children in her class admire, respect and copy. So that if you have a teacher who is a homosexual, whose homosexuality is open and admitted, he is in fact recommending homosexual behaviour to children. Now, a very great proportion of perfectly normal children during their adolescence go through a period when they are inclined to be homosexual, when they make very close relationships with people of their own sex. It's part of growing up. But I fear that if at that stage homosexuality were recommended to them sympathetically as a way of life, their development would be arrested and they would not go on in their development to reach the stage that most normal people do.
Now, one of the facts of psychological facts of development is that pretty well everybody, goes through what the psychologists call the homosexual phase. This is when the girls are, we used to call it, had a pash, they'd probably call it something quite different now, on the hockey captain or the school captain, and equally so with the boys. Now that is a perfectly normal phase to go through. I think there's an area of very great sensitivity here, that what we have to do as teachers is help them to grow through that without putting any kind of pressure upon them, which concentrates their mind on that particular period they're going through. To leave them free and natural and they will grow through it, they won't even be aware of the fact they've been through it or what it was they went through. And I think there are great dangers in certainly militant homosexuals in being involved in any way with that period of a child's development.
The notion that an individual homosexual teacher in any way converts someone to homosexual activity is a palpable nonsense. I mean, on several levels. First of all, all research shows that it's completely untrue. But if one takes a situation, say, whereby somebody is converted in that sort of manner, there would be no homosexual people at all, because our entire society, the media, the education system, the family, is geared to push heterosexuality. I knew I was gay when I was 13. Yet I had, as far as I was concerned, been in contact with no homosexual influences whatsoever. None at all. Now, if putting children in contact with that sort of influence means that they are going to take on that sort of personality, homosexual or heterosexual, then I would have turned out heterosexual. I didn't. I'm gay.
And this brings us back to the point of offering a third sexual model. And I don't think that this really has a major effect on their lives, in that I have chosen to be homosexual, although I had two very good models, i.e. a mother and a father who were heterosexual. And most gays are born of heterosexual parents, so I don't see this has a gross effect on the children, no.
Nobody considers the fact that there are such things as gay kids. I mean, I was a gay kid. From the time when I realised that I had sexual feelings, I realised that those sexual feelings were gay. I've gone through a long period of my youth when I was desperate to try and be anything other than homosexual because of the society. Society's views are so bad about homosexuals and society is very heterosexually orientated. Despite that, I came through as being homosexual. This is a similar occurrence for many gay people I know. The idea that the presence of one gay teacher in a school or several gay teachers in a school is going to convert people to homosexuality is a nonsense as far as I'm concerned.
The experts we spoke to backed up this view that gay teachers are unlikely to make gay pupils.
Well, in my experience, whether or not a child is going to grow up into a heterosexual or a homosexual is probably largely determined during the very early years of life. Some people believe that it is even a genetic disposition that decides this. Other people will say it's to do with earlier satisfactions in the first relationships of life during the first 2 or 3 years of life. My feeling is that it would be most unlikely that a gay teacher is really going to influence how those children would turn out with regards to their own sexuality.
In fact, of course, no one knows for certain what will make these children grow up straight or gay. Mrs. Whitehouse and others like her have no way of proving they're right, because sexual development is a subject on which science still cannot provide any answers. But one of the few gay teachers who has been allowed to be open in the classroom feels sure that it hasn't affected his pupils.
I've been an openly gay teacher in a boys' comprehensive school in South London for the past 6 years. During that time, I've had nothing but positive attitudes fed to me by both staff, pupils, and parents. I've been promoted twice within the school and was recently elected to the school governing body. I think there is often a situation where people end up thinking, gay teacher, shock horror, there are going to be problems. In fact, particularly with the kids, there seems to be little or no problem at all. In fact, one of the situations seems to me to be that, in fact, they take it far better in their stride than most people. And for instance, when I was interviewed by a local paper, I had a group of second-year kids at 3:45 come charging up to me, giggling their heads off, nudging each other and saying, "Go on, you ask him, go on, you, go on." And eventually, having said, "Oh, come on, what is it? Get on with it." One of the kids was sort of pushed forward and said, please sir, is it true that you're 27? And I mean, that seems to me to sum it up. The fact that I was a homosexual had been accepted by the kids quite easily. The thing that they found really interesting and entertaining was my age.
Gay teachers say that it's their opponents who are really doing the damage by excluding homosexuals and homosexuality from the classroom.
And it's rather like talking about British history and ignoring the Romans. I mean, it distorts everything. I honestly believe that in terms of the curriculum, it needs to be looked at and to included far more frequently. For instance, there are lots of literature written by gay women and men, and it is important that you know they're gay women and men, just as important you know Tchaikovsky's gay to understand his music. It is important that you know James I is gay to understand his politics. And also, of course, is the very important factor that one is teaching a class of 30 children, some of whom statistically have got to be gay and deserve the right to have the same sort of advice and help in forming relationships as heterosexual children have. And that needs to come in as well, very much so.
At the moment, schools try and cater for a multiracial society, try and cater for against sexist materials so that women and men are treated equally. But at the moment, schools do not cater equally for gay students and straight students. And if you're a gay student, everywhere you look, the curriculum brings down iron bars. If you're lucky, you'll get mentioned in terms of sickness and perversion. If you're not lucky, you won't get mentioned at all. And I think for many gay pupils, their school days are the unhappiest days of their lives.
Whatever their critics say, the gay teachers remain adamant. They believe that their presence in the classroom is already having an important and beneficial effect on both straight and gay pupils.
Well, I think generally what it has done has presented them with something which doesn't fit in with the stereotypes that the rest of society, the media, the education system, their parents, newspapers have given them. They see someone who is a homosexual, who is simply an ordinary person. I think that is the first thing it's done. I think it's therefore made them look at their own prejudices, not simply in terms of gays, but in terms of prejudice in itself. I think we've created a situation whereby, hopefully, we'll get no queer bashers coming out of my school, because they will not be in a position to say, as one queer basher said, oh, it doesn't make any difference when you smack a queer because they're not real people. The most important thing is I am a real person and a homosexual.